This is Africa Speaks, and quickly we just want to get into an analytical perspective right here in studio on of course, the status of the continent. And joining me is Dr. Wilfred Mutubwa, who is an advocate, but of course wearing different hats in terms of achieving different milestones. And the awards you have received are quite tremendous. Thank you for joining us.
I'm very welcome, Doris, and thank you for having me today.
Thank you for, of course, gracing our screens. The President of the Republic of Kenya has spoken on the current situation, the floods, and you've had a number of lives lost so far. We're hitting a mark of over 300. Let me just hear your opening remarks to this matter, even as we also acknowledge that floods have hit our neighbors, Tanzania, Burundi, among other countries in the continent.
Thank you very much. This is a very sad time. It's devastating. It's far-reaching consequences on the lives of people, property, disrupting our lives as we know, just coming out of one crisis into the next one. It is not a Kenyan problem, as you have said rightly. It is a problem that faces the entire belt on the continent. There has been unprecedented rain. Perhaps the biggest floods we have seen in our lifetime, in our generation, and no one quite knows what to do exactly. But concerted effort, I'm happy to hear the President come out and speak about a whole nation approach, private sector, government, what really is called a multi-sectoral approach. The effects of the flood don't seem to dissipate. I do not think that it is a problem we are going to deal with short-term interventions. There may be long-term effects to what we are seeing. Displacement, death, infrastructure is going to be badly battered. We may need some injection of funds just to come back and go by.
Right.
Because economic activity is also going to be affected. Transport is going down. Schools are not opening. Consumption is at its lowest. Power generation, although the dams are full, power generation is cut off because infrastructure is going to be hit. So as a people, we are facing a period of uncertainty, and it was important for the leader to come out, speak to the Kenyan people and assure them.
But they say talk and no action might not really bear a lot of fruits. In fact, I'm curious to the fact that you said that people don't know exactly what to do. I mean, a number of African countries celebrating some years of self-rule, independence, etc. Is it a governance issue to really reach a point of saying, even as floods are striking, people really don't know what to do? 60
years plus, many African countries have been free. We still suffer many problems. Doris, let's be candid with ourselves.
Okay.
We have mismanaged our affairs for many years. It cannot be that one single event can be dealt with after many years of misrule, mismanagement of our affairs, mismanagement of our disaster response. And I want to say this. You look at the disaster preparedness, and I want to cut the government some slack, and African governments. This is unprecedented. It is at the levels of Katrina and other levels of floods in Japan and other countries. So it's not isolated. It's not an issue only for Africa or Africans. But we should have been better prepared. Disaster management is allocated 2% of our annual budgets at national, county governments. We should at least have mitigation. At the very least, we should not have people sleeping in the cold. We should have camps established today, food. We should have electricity restored. We should have people having rescue and their needs met as and when the problem arises. So there is no excuse in failing to plan for a bad day.
Okay.
But again, we must look at the magnitude of the problem. The problem is one that we have not experienced, at least not in our living history, many of us. And therefore, we are grappling with the problem as we go. But governments are elected so that they can deal with problems. Governments are put in place to collect taxes so that they can react to problems like this. I have had messaging from African governments, our own government. I have had messaging from organizations, international institutions, regional bodies, the African Union, the EU, the East Africa Community. But is it too little, too late? Are we doing enough? We're still losing people.
Is it too little too late? In fact, just looking at what is happening across board in our neighboring countries, someone would ask then, is there a need for African states to come together in a joint effort to mitigate the floods? And looking at what now has been brought in as a possible cyclone, dubbed Hidaya, something that might be very new, especially in Kenya, the first of its kind. The question would be, this is new to us. If floods has been with us for some time, how are we going to tackle Hidaya? Are we ready for it if it does reach us in a matter of a few days or weeks rather?
Doris, the truth is that we are not ready. The sooner we face that reality, the better for everybody.
We cannot lie down on that.
We are not ready. We have never seen a cyclone. We do not know how to behave in a cyclone.
Okay.
We have a big problem, and I don't want you to put your money on African organizations, the AU or the EAC. These are talk shops, places where people go to speak and write papers. The truth of the matter is that we have had problems. Droughts have been with us. We have just come out of a devastating drought. I was reading that Zimbabwe is facing food shortage because of a drought down there. Here, we have excess water. And I can tell you, Africa is a land of contradictions. Plenty and scarcity at the same time.
All right.
I can tell you there are places in Africa where people are craving for water, while in other places we are crying because of water. The truth of the matter is that the capacity of African regional organizations to deal with disaster is really at the lowest. The African Union has a disaster program. The East Africa Community has a disaster unit for dealing with floods, disruptions like these, droughts, food shortage, shocks that come with the climatic changes and other natural disasters.
All right.
But have you seen a multi-agency, a multi-country approach in Africa on anything? You see, Africa today faces three threats. Number one, you can see that there is instability in the west of Africa. Coups have returned in Africa, and there is now flooding, there is drought. But when you look at disaster response in Africa is the poorest because there is no commitment to fund, to establish institutions, because you expected that at this time, Kenya, Tanzania, Burundi, and other places where floods are devastating the people should have already received some sort of support from the region. You can imagine what happens in Europe in the event that there is a glacier or some mudslide. You will see swift, effective response. I am not saying that we should not have these problems. Problems will always come. But the truth of the matter is how you deal with those problems is what the citizens are looking for.
As we get your parting shot on this, was just quick fire.
Yes.
You're saying that it's a contradicting continent. It's quite ironical to hear because we just saw the 37th, AU summit, attended by different heads of state. In fact, them giving their remarks on a number of things. You do not seem very confident that what they say is what they say, together with their closing remarks.
And I want to tell you this: look at the theme that has been chosen for these years, AU conference. 37 years of the summit. They are talking about education systems.
Yes.
What is the most pressing problem in Africa today? Is it the education system? Is it the unconstitutional changes in government in the West? Are they the floods and disaster? Is it climate change? What is it that is a priority to us as Africans? Do we discuss the things that are important to us at the moment? And I think that is where we fall short, because the African Union should be at the forefront in leading the agenda, setting the agenda for change in Africa, particularly on matters that are really pressing at the moment. For me, it does not reflect what is current, what is important for us, and what we should be doing at the moment.
Do you believe in a better... Sorry to interject. Yes.
In fact, if I think about it, this summit should have been suspended this year because of the problems that Africans are facing and because of the problems that come with natural disasters today. Half of the continent is facing serious economic problems and climatic problems. Is it a time to discuss education systems in Africa, for instance?
All right.
Yes.
Finally, do you believe in a better Africa, however, looking at how things are moving? If we do scoop the AUC chairs, Kenya, of course, what are your final remarks?
I'm a very optimistic African.
Okay.
Africans have the biggest, youngest population. They have brilliant minds, good leaders, very effective people, but we just don't seem to get our act together. But I think with time, and the change has started happening on the continent. And I think Africa is set for good days. Better days are coming.
Better days are coming.
Yeah, but we must keep on speaking about our shortcomings.
Indeed.
If we have to get there.
Indeed, and that, of course, allows me to also promise the viewer that we'll have you for a longer conversation next time, as these conversations are not really conclusive.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Wilfred Mutubwa, for creating time to be here. You're the advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and, of course, for joining us this particular day for this discussion on Africa Speaks.